afternoon, and morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Distant Relatives. This is our platform to really expose the world to many individuals, powerful people who are doing the work in the African diaspora, who are not just talking. We are about making Pan-Africanism tangible, something that people can touch, something that people can do, and ways for them to get involved. And I really am passionate about this type of work and showing people that other people are doing this work so that they know that African Unity Initiative is not the only organization out here pushing the narrative that we can be unified as African peoples globally. I want to welcome everyone and introduce everyone to our special guest today, Shola Ajayi. She is the president of You're for Africa and also, Public Art Africa.
That's right, yeah.
And Shola, I want you to go ahead and let the people know a little bit more about you, the work that you do, the two organizations that you have, and how they function.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jamal, for having me. I'm really, really excited to be here. So my name is Shola Ajayi. I am the president of UR for Africa and the founder of Public Art Africa. I'm a part-time lecturer and also a filmmaker and screenwriter. UR for Africa was kind of born from this idea that we wanted to create positive images about Nigeria and Africa, and African people. Especially because at the time when we started UR for Africa, there was just a lot of negative films and media about what was happening in Africa and in Nigeria. So it started off with the film and it just kind of evolved into the space that it is now, which is basically a space where people from the diaspora and people from Africa come together to work on social development projects and also on media projects. Public Art Africa was born from that because a lot of young people were interested in creating and connecting, not just with one another, but with their community. We have a lot of talented young people in Nigeria and in Africa overall, but we rarely get to see them create in those spaces. They're not encouraged to create. So Public Art Africa is a space for young people to do that. It's a space for young people to create. It's a space for young people to express themselves. It's a space for young people to engage with their community in positive ways. So that's Public Art Africa. That's basically what I do when I'm here. I work with young people. I work with communities here, just trying to figure out ways to strive in environments like Nigeria, and collaborate with people in various parts of the world.
That is excellent work. It's so necessary because I feel that one of the things that inspired me to want to go to Africa is, for some reason, I've always just been a stubborn person, right? So growing up in the United States, I'm from Atlanta. I was, born and raised in the US. And as a Black person, as a child, all I saw on television was, negative images of Africa. We saw the charity commercials where they would show just some random white guy in some field surrounded by Black children and he picks up a baby and a fly is on the face and all of this. And these are the images that they're showing us. And then on the flip side, we have programs like National Geographic Explorer, and they go from country to country showing the lifestyle and how different cultures flourish, right? They'll go to China, they go to Peru, they go to all these places. They go to anywhere in Africa, and I swear to God, there's not a person in sight. There is animals, there's the savannah. There is, this is how the lion hunts. And it's like, hold up. Now, when you were in Asia, you showed me the tigers and you showed me people. So, exactly. You know what I mean? And so it and as a child, you don't realize how much you internalize those things and what your brain is doing, where you don't see images of people in Africa, then you don't relate to that place.
Exactly. Yeah.
But like I said, I was stubborn. I was like, something's not right here. I rejected it from the beginning. So
Good.
everything that you are doing is so necessary because everyone isn't as stubborn as me. And I grew up around people who they had been indoctrinated by the images that they were shown of Africa, and Africa was never on their list of places that they wanted to visit, right? It was never on the list of destination locations or vacations or any such thing. And we don't understand how powerful our dollar is, our tourist dollar, and how that
Exactly.
impacts, Europe being this power, right? A lot of it has to do with people wanting to go there and visit and them doing a good job of promoting that. And so
Yeah.
there are people like yourself who are taking your time to actually present Africa in a positive light. So I already told you that I was going to go down a path of a certain list of questions, but we might take some detours based on something that you say. So the first detour is I want to ask you about Black is King. So Beyonce comes out with
Mhm.
Black is King, and her intention is to show Africa in a more positive light, to expose it to her audience in a way that is palatable to her audience, right? And this is how I understood that. However, she came under some criticism
She did.
for doing this. What are your thoughts on Black is King? What are your thoughts on her intentions? And your thoughts on the criticism?
Man, media is so funny. You know what I'm saying? Like someone could go in with the best intentions to create something, um, and it doesn't go the way that they want, you know? When I first started seeing the ads for Black is King, I was excited, just to see the images that I did see. And I guess my challenge with Beyonce making this film, I think, I guess is the timeliness of it. I think one of the challenges with Beyonce, is that, her projects kind of fall within trends of things that are happening. I don't think it would have been that she would have come under fire if it was something that was consistent about her. You know what I mean? I get what she was trying to do, and I think it's important to create these images. But I think at some point people will start to question if it's exploitation. You know what I mean? And I think that that's why she's under fire for it. Because at the end of the day, she made money. I don't know if that money is going to go towards communities in Africa or the groups of people that worked with her. And I think that that's what people are questioning, and not so much the images themselves or what she created, but the why. You know what I'm saying? So I haven't seen it, actually. I haven't seen Black is King. I've just seen clips and a couple of videos and not the whole thing. But from what I heard, and I had a friend that worked on it, from what I heard, it was a beautiful project, really great people to work with. But I guess the question is the why, you know what I mean? Like just making sure that she's sure about the why and her intention in creating it. You know what I mean?
I understand that, right?
Yeah.
But I also believe that we at a certain point we have to start somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially with so Beyonce, if you followed her music at all, she has
Yes.
shown personal growth every album. And so you
Yep.
see her learning things. So like in the
Mm-hmm.
Lemonade album, there are things about Black American history that she started to learn
Mm-hmm.
about and that she started to present in her music from the Super
Yeah.
Bowl performance to formation to wearing the Black Panther jackets and the, you know, the black gloves. And so starting to embrace that more in her music. And so she goes from the US centralized blackness to start to expand it into, and let me find out about my pre-United States history in Africa. So it's an African American wanting to journey home to find out more. And because of, you know, the cause and what happened during the transatlantic experience, we don't have a specific pinpoint of where in Africa we definitely come from. So we, those of us who, you know, wake up to that presence of our roots, have to really embrace the entire continent. And so what she did was she took pieces of different parts and different ethnicities and showed it. And like I said, she's exposing it to her audience in a way that's palatable for them. And in the work that we do as African Unity Initiative, it's very important for people with that type of platform to embrace that type of imagery, because of course she made money from it. She's an artist, and you know, she created a piece of art. But what she did was she took money from a company like Disney, and she said, I will do the Lion King that has no humans in it, but it's set in Africa. But I will also use my leverage as a, you know, a black powerful star to present that same story, because Black is King is just the Lion King. It's the story of the Lion King presented in Africa with real people, though. So I'm going to use my power and leverage this story that is only using talking animals set in Africa, that shows not one person in the film. I want to tell that story using people and through my music, so that people across the diaspora can see themselves. I'm not seeing myself in Simba, but I'm seeing myself in that young boy that was portrayed in Black is King through the songs, right? As he develops through the story. And also she used the platform to give exposure to African artists. Tiwa Savage, I know Burna Boy and Yemi Alade, to name a few, were, you know, guests in Black is King. They were contributors, you know, and so those are elements and those are ways to not only give back because they're getting paid so they can give back to their communities, but they also get exposure to new audiences and become bigger. I just think it's a question of, what do we want? We will challenge our celebrities for not speaking up at all and not doing anything. And then when they do and make an attempt, like Beyonce is not a political scientist. She's not a historian. She's an artist. So she is presenting her awakeness, her consciousness, and her learning through the art that we know her for. So I think that that is respectable. And I think there is room always for critique, but I think that we should really understand, why are we critiquing? Like, because sometimes it feels like we get addicted to the struggle. We want something to complain about. And I want us to be solution oriented. And, you know, if there is a celebrity that has the attention of millions of people, have them partner up with a scholar, and then they can put that scholar on to their audience, but then that scholar can also be feeding the celebrity who has the cultural capital the correct information to say, right? So that what they're saying is not, it's not the Dave Chappelle skit of, why are we talking to Ja Rule right now, right? But Ja Rule has social capital at that moment. That's why they're talking to him. That's why they're not talking to, you know, a Michael Eric Dyson, because Michael Eric Dyson may not have the fans and the following that a Ja Rule had in the year 2000, right? So there has to be a culmination of the two, and we can't just criticize because it's happening. And, you know, but because as a filmmaker and as a person yourself who is wanting to present Africa in a positive light,
Yep.
you know, if Beyonce is creating that path, right? And she is making it palatable for the world to say, this is something that I want to see, then it creates even a bigger lane for people like you who are coming up in the aftermath. So, and I'll just use this as an example. There are some up and coming comedians they're now doing some social media live streaming comedy shows. But they said that because Dave Chappelle did it first and showed how you can do a socially distanced, safe, coronavirus proof comedy show, that now that people saw a bigger act do it, they will accept it from the lesser known acts. But if they had done it first, even though they already had the idea before Chappelle did it, but had they done it first, it may not have been well received. But because Chappelle did it and he's respected, then people will accept it from them. So now that Beyonce has, not saying that other people weren't presenting Africa in a positive light through their art and through other things, but because Beyonce has that spotlight, and because it was successful, and because she was able to use a company that really could care less about Black people, but she had leverage. Yeah. And she used her power to use their funds to do something to represent us. It creates more space for creators like yourself and others that I know who will continue to march down that path and even be more authentic because you may know more, because you may be more educated. But I think there's a space for that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I love what you said about Beyonce growing. You know what I mean? So like we see her growing through her art, through her performances, through her CDs, right? But I think one of the things to also remember is that like when you're creating something, and this is, I don't know what all the accusations are towards her, or what were people's specific problems with the project, you know? But there is something about creating a film or creating a project and it being collaborative, right? So I'd be really interested. I'd be really interested in knowing on the production, like if she leaned a lot on the people that are African who were working on the project with her. Did she listen to the Nigerian artists that were performing? Did she listen to the Ghanaian producers that were working with her? Or did she have a vision and she wanted to fulfill that vision? You know what I mean? And I think that that's probably one of the questions that we need to really look at. It's like, it's kind of like when someone comes to Africa, for example, to a place like Nigeria, and they want to make a film and they already have this perception of what Nigeria is. It might not be the right perception, you know, but they have this vision, they want to create it. So people are going to work with them because they want a job, they want to get paid, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, when this project is over, these people might complain that like, oh, you know, I just did it was just a job. You know what I mean? Instead of it being something that's collaborative, that filmmaker comes into a space, into a community, has a conversation with those people in their community, shares their idea, shares their vision with that person, and then has a conversation about how's this going to present you? How do you think your people are going to receive it? You know what I mean? Right. So it becomes a conversation, and you know, and I think that is a filmmaker. Can you hear me?
Yes, I got you.
Can you still hear me? Yeah, so that's kind of the big responsibility of a filmmaker, but a content creator, you know, a storyteller, especially if you're telling stories about other people. So yeah, I don't know if that question, yeah.
You know, all of that is fair. I just like the conversation because I believe that we have to start somewhere. Yeah. It's just like we were saying, there are not that many positive images. So when they come, I am happy to see them. And then just like any evolution of anything, television started black and white and now we have 4K HD. It's going, you know, just now it being a thing, it will grow over time to be more specific and more detailed and more representative. But, you know, we have to acknowledge when we are moving in the right direction. And I think we
Yeah.
are moving in the right direction on a lot of different levels. And, you know, we've come a long way. There's still a long way to go, no doubt. But
yes,
we've
and
come
the
a long way.
critique is part of that, you know, the critique is part of that. So even
Oh,
though,
definitely.
you know, I'm sure that she was hoping that like the project would come out and everyone would love it. You know what I mean? And the best thing about it is that there are critiques. So then the next time someone wants to come and create something, they can kind of counter these issues that came up. You know what I mean? So yes, it's awesome that she created it. She, you know, kind of, I mean, she spearheaded it, right? So it's a project that people, I think, are excited about, but there are people that still have questions about it. And I don't think it's wrong to have questions or criticisms about the project. And we learn that way too, you know? So, so I'm really interested in seeing the whole thing, but did you love it?
I did. And as a person who has had to, like, as an African American, right? I've had to battle on both sides because I've always wanted to know more about my roots. So I had the arguments with other African Americans that didn't want anything to do with Africa. And so an artist on the level of Beyonce is making it palatable for the people who I've been arguing with my entire life. Now they are embracing Africa. And even if it starts off as a fad, the more they are open to knowing, the more I can give real information. I just need the door to be open. I know I can pull them in once they are already, once their interest is peaked. I'm not expecting the artist to carry the entire load. Me as a scholar, I'm going to take that opportunity that while it's a fad to latch on to that and make sure that it doesn't just stay a fad, that you get information, that it's fun and creative in the way that I present that information though, where, you know, it makes people want to stay and know more and acknowledge their African roots and acknowledge the importance of that. And then also as an African American who has always embraced my African roots, I would run into African immigrants who would tell me how African I am not. And having to battle against them and say, you know, I don't care that if you take a lion right now from Savannah and you put it in the middle of Minnesota, that lion does not stop being a lion.
Yeah, exactly.
If you take me and my ancestors from whatever coast that we were taken from and you place us in Jamaica, you place us in Haiti, you place us in Peru, you place me in Atlanta, Georgia, I am African. And not a person on the planet can tell me that I'm not African. You know what I mean? And so we both were colonized of our minds and kind of pitted against one another intentionally. And so these are the things that I'm fighting against. But I know as a person who's been trying to convince African Americans to look to Africa as a place, and now they're doing it, I'm not the type of person that says, I've been telling you this. Why didn't you listen when I said it? I'm saying, wonderful. Somebody that you listen to said it. So now you'll be more acceptable to the information, right?
Yeah.
So I don't care how it comes. I just care that it comes.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point too. And I'm glad you brought up this concept of like target audience, because I talk to my students about that too. Like when you're making a film, who are you making it for? So Beyonce most likely was making this video or this movie or this film for African Americans, you know what I mean? For the same reason she needed to make it for herself. She wanted to learn more about her roots, you know what I mean? So that's a little bit harder for someone that's already living here, you know what I'm saying? And seeing these images, like I'd be interested in like, we should like, it would be great to like organize some kind of screening of the film and have people from the diaspora actually like watch it, right? And then people living on the continent watch it and then have them have a conversation about it. You know what I mean? I think there would be a lot of great conversations that would come up from that. You know what I mean? Just to hear from people living on the continent what they thought about it. You know what I mean? Or if they thought anything about it. You know, we already know Tiwa Savage here. We already know Burna Boy and Yemi Alade. You know, So it's great that they've kind of had an opportunity to be exposed to like the Western aspect of the world. But I'd be interested in hearing what people here on the continent thought of the film, you know what I mean? Or if they even got a chance to see it or knew about it, you know? So, but yeah, you know, that made me think about target audience, like who did it for. Can you still hear me?
I think you just planned our first collaboration. And we will talk more about that. Trust me, there will be something coming soon. And, you know, nuggets and so many great things will come out of that. And I'm sure it'll be a great conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to get back to you, though. So as a person, tell me again, you were born in Nigeria and you moved to Florida? Okay.
Yeah, I was born in Ibadan, moved to Florida when I was a baby. And basically was traveling back and forth between the States and Nigeria since the age of 10. My parents were really adamant about us doing that. The first time we traveled back to Nigeria, like, we're scared because I mean, we're going to school in the States, and like all we heard were such negative things in school about Africa and, you know, famine and wars, you know. So when my mom was like, "Oh, we're going to visit our family in Nigeria," we were so upset, you know, until we got here and we're like, "Oh, they've been lying to us." They've been lying to us. You know, and that our parents didn't tell us, you know, it was just, I guess we didn't believe them, you know, because we were seeing, you know, things in books, you know, things on TV, you know. So what our parents are telling us, like, no, it's not like that. We're like, "Bruh, whatever, you don't know." We're like, "You don't know anything." Until we got here ourselves and saw, you know, beautiful country, you know, like a beautiful country, and people don't even realize. And, you know, when African Americans get frightened about coming to Africa, like, I can't blame them. I mean, I cannot, because I see what the media does. I see what they share.
So you yourself, as a born Nigerian citizen, were initially cautious of going back to your home country because of the reports and everything that you were being fed by American media.
Yeah, I mean, not just media, in school. Like, I think before we went back, that really popular song "We Are the World" came out. You know what I mean? There was that happening in Ethiopia. So we were like, thinking we have to bring cans of food and stuff with us. You know, that was the other aspect too, is that, like, while we were in school, you know, we're being told that Africa is like one place. You know what I'm saying? We didn't even have the concept like Nigeria being like its own place outside of Ethiopia, outside, you know what I mean, outside of South Africa, because like all these things are happening in Africa at that time. Like apartheid is happening, you know, the Ethiopian famine. I mean, so many different things. I think Somalia, I think what stuff was happening in Somalia. So a lot of what we saw in school and heard in school it was not the best stuff about Africa, what we were learning in school. And our parents tried to counter it. They did, but it was almost to deaf ears, you know.
So what you're saying to me, that even though you had two Nigerian parents who could literally counter every falsity that was happening in your formal education as well as in the media, the media and your formal education were so powerful of influences that it kind of overshadowed what your parents were telling you from firsthand experience. So you can definitely understand the African American or the person in the diaspora who is so very, I don't want to call it ignorant, but miseducated. Miseducated, because the root word of ignorant is ignore. And to ignore something means that the truth has been presented to you and you just are not paying attention to it. So it's not ignorance, it's miseducation, and intentional miseducation, right? So you can empathize. you can empathize with those of us who don't know, right?
I can.
And so
More so
that's
than most people
very
I know. More
right, and
so
that's
than most
very
people.
important.
The attitude here is that the attitude here for a lot of Nigerians is that, like, oh, African Americans complain too much. You know, they live in the best place country in the world. You know, the world power. I'm like, you have no idea what African Americans go through in the United States every day,
Right,
and they won't. They can't, because the images that they see of America would make it sound like African Americans are crazy. You know what I'm saying?
right,
Like the images that we get here. I mean, up until like Black Lives Matter, people didn't know what was going on. Up until that film came out, that
right.
When They Yes, you see
When they see
how
us,
people were so upset. Yes, you know, that made a huge dent here with people knowing about what people were going through here and going through in the United States is When They See Us. It's so
so
interesting the reaction that people had to that film, to that project. You know what I mean? And it's been going on
okay,
forever. It's not like it just
right.
happened. You know what I'm saying?
And that
People didn't
that
know.
that movie was about a case that happened in the 80s.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. You know, and people just didn't know. People, I mean,
Right.
we organized a screening with a group here in Nigeria, and we
hmm
showed 13th, you know, I think
Right.
during here in Nigeria. And if you see how people were crying, you know what I mean? Like people had no idea,
Right.
you know, and
Yes.
it's like, you know, when people think about the civil rights movement, think of just Martin Luther King. You know what I mean?
Right.
Many people don't know about Malcolm X, you know,
Right.
Medgar Evers, like so many people don't know
Right.
about it, you know, and it's like, it's such a shame, you know what I mean? Because we should know, you know, just like you all should know about like a wolf for here in Nigeria, you know what I'm
hmm
saying?
Right.
But there's no synergy when it comes to our histories, you know what I mean? And there's so much what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, there's so much connection between our histories.
hmm
We're so much
Definitely.
more alike than we are different, and we don't even realize it. You know what I mean?
And
We have
and
the same struggle.
it goes deeper. So and
Yes,
you can find the similarities in the struggle, but then it
mm-hmm.
goes deeper than even that. Because what I
Exactly.
don't like to do, I don't like to only build the foundation of African unity in a similar struggle. Because once we
Right.
overcome that struggle, it seems like there's no more need for the unification. So I
Mm.
like to focus our unification on the bonds of we are rooted from Africa and we still have African retentions and actions in the way that we speak, in the way that we
Mhm.
dance, in the way that we cook, in the way that we worship. There are so many things that we still do as Africans in the diaspora that can be seen still happening on the continent today. So it
Exactly.
shows you that we
Exactly.
never lost our culture. We just
Exactly.
lost how to name it.
Yeah. Language. You
So
know,
exactly. And
family
so
language.
the important thing is like everything that you're saying is so excellent because when these when I've encountered the people like I said in my previous statement, African immigrants telling me how African I am not, that's because they probably came to America at an older age, whereas you came here, so you saw all the indoctrination of what we are fed.
Exactly. I did.
And even though you had people in your home who were combating it, the poison was more potent than the fruit. And
Yeah. I mean, my
so,
parents paid to bring us back to Nigeria, you know, and
mhm,
we stayed for an extended period of time, you know, before we came back. But once we saw it, like, there's no way that anyone could tell us anything differently about Africa, you know, like,
right, exactly,
there, we've seen it. You know what I mean? Like, what
right,
you're saying is wrong. Like, and that has been my experience
mm,
in every school that I've been. That's even for college. That's even for grad school. You know what I mean? That people want to define Africa a certain way, and it's the wrong way. You know what I mean?
mhm.
It's
No,
the wrong
definitely.
way. Um, so,
No, I
so
completely
yeah, I'm really
understand.
grateful to my parents for really encouraging us to come back and forth so many times throughout my childhood. We did that consistently.
Definitely. So my initial question.
Sorry, I don't know why my phone is ringing.
No problem.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
I can hear you. I can hear the phone too.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I don't know where. Oh my gosh.
Hold on for a minute.
I'm so sorry.
I'm gonna mute you and then I'll bring you back. Is it good?
Yeah, I think it's. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Oh, no problem. It's no thing. So I wanted to go back through the comments. So my sister just chimed in and said, we need to make those connections and figure out how to show the similarities in our histories and experiences. One of the most easiest ways to do that, just like you mentioned, and you being a filmmaker, is through art, through film, which is why I think, because it's more palatable, you can just sit down and passively receive information. A lot of people learn through documentaries. A lot of people learn through biopics. That's why that's why a good, accurate biopic is so very important.
I said good and accurate. Good and accurate is important.
Shola, you will learn by knowing me that I'm very particular with my words. And so I am very careful with what I say. And then my professor said that Ibram Kendi does a good job of breaking down how anti-Black stereotypes shape people's thinking on both sides of the Black Atlantic.
Both sides,
so
yeah, absolutely. Both books are excellent. Excellent.
And how to be anti-racist.
Yeah, how to be an anti-racist. Yeah, how to be an anti-racist is very good. And from the beginning, also very, very good. Both very, very good books.
This book. Yeah. So I was going to ask you what sparked your interest in the Afrikan diaspora, but in me asking you about your upbringing, I kind of get it, but still, like once because as a child, you knew that, okay, I'm being educated in American schools and then I get to experience Africa. When was the first time that you heard of the term the Afrikan diaspora as a term, and how was the concept presented to you?
I think I learned about the Afrikan diaspora like kind of after graduate school. You know, and it's not obviously I feel like I'm part of the Afrikan diaspora, you know what I mean?
Right.
I went to high school with African Americans and Jamaicans and Haitians, you know. And I think one of the hardest parts about high school specifically was just the lack of acceptance. So I like what you said resonated with me about how, you know, Africans will tell you you're not African, you know what I'm saying? Because African Americans that I grew up with, like, didn't necessarily feel like I belonged in their community. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, here as well, like, people will say the same thing because of like the American accent. The fact that I grew up in the States partially and in Nigeria makes me more American than Nigerian, you know? So I definitely understand this feeling of like kind of being isolated from a group, right? So, but like, throughout my education, I had always interacted with people from Afrikan diaspora and done, like, I studied photography in school. I did this huge project about how Black people felt that people perceive them when they first see them. You know what I mean? So it's like, it was a photo project and they got to kind of share quotes with them. I superimposed the quotes on to the images, but that started very early for me. So I knew that there was something there with this divide between people from like Jamaica, people from the United States, people from Haiti. There was this weird division. So I wanted to explore that, you know what I mean? But it wasn't until much later when I started to think more realistically about moving back. This idea of the Afrikan diaspora and what that looks like. I think also because of conversations I was having here at home with people, and then conversations I were having with people in the States, you know, just like thinking about like, oh, what would it take for you to move to Africa, like to Nigeria? What would it take, you know? And most times people like hadn't even thought about it. You know what I mean? It wasn't even an option. So yeah, with my travels and everything, it's just become kind of like a big focus for me. I got to go to Cuba last year, and I was so excited to go, and then so disappointed when I got there. You know what I mean? Because I just saw that brown people that look like me, were struggling. Like everywhere I went, like in my travels, brown people were struggling, and I was like, why? Right. Why is this happening? And it shouldn't be that way. Especially because like we're such a large number everywhere, you know what I mean, in South America and in the United States, right, in Africa, in Asia, you know what I mean? Like, so why are we struggling? You know what I mean? And yeah, I wanted to be part of spaces that kind of focus on making sure that Black and brown people are thriving. And because right. I don't see enough of it. I don't. So that's basically where my has been sparked, basically, with all my interactions and my travels and conversations I've had with amazing people. I want us to thrive, and we should be thriving. We shouldn't be attacked in every area that we go to, and unfortunately it's like we're under attack everywhere we go. And I'm like, why? What happened? What's going on? So yeah, I mean, that's what sparked my interest.
I had that very same question when I started like reading more in high school. I started reading books outside of what were assigned to me in school, and most of them were just about being Black and what it means and all the history and everything that had happened. And I remember I was reading this book called Sabah, The Reawakening of the African Mind. And one of the chapters, and it's by Dr. Asa G. Hilliard, who's my favorite scholar and author. And one of the chapters was talking about how the Spanish intentionally had tried to wipe out the Black population by intermixing. Their idea of getting rid of the Black race was through genetics, not understanding how Black genetics work, and that our genetics will show up, down the line for generations. But they literally were planning genocide through intermixing. And, we're proudly speaking about it. And I remember putting the book down, was like, what did we do to someone? Like, where in Africa did we just knock somebody's head off to provoke this? And it wasn't something that we did to anybody. It was a justification of the acts that they were already committing.
Exactly.
They had to convince themselves that Africans were less than, because they knew that Europe had learned everything that they gained from Africa, whether it was the Greeks learning everything that they know from ancient Kemet, or the Western Europeans learning everything that they knew from places like Timbuktu and Morocco, and Hannibal and the Moors, and all of these people who pretty much brought Europe out of dark ages into civilization, teaching them how to wash themselves and such. And so having that reality be the existence, they couldn't justify enslaving and exploiting a people that were not only equal to them, but almost their seniors in a way. So it was indoctrination on both sides. Like, even the most bigoted white person in Alabama, they have been just as indoctrinated and miseducated as the Black person. They've been miseducated to believe that they're superior.
Exactly. Yeah.
And crazy. So it's going to take a long time to get that type of conditioning out of people's minds. It's not just going to happen overnight. So it's a beautiful burden. But it's important to have people like yourself who not only has that experience of wanting to make Africa be presented in a better light, but also is traveled well enough and has the experiences and the empathy to see what the reality is with Black people in the diaspora.
Exactly,
And what those challenges are, and understand how to work within those so that collaborations can work more fluidly.
exactly.
I want to know, in your opinion, and it says, do you believe it's important for connections across the diaspora? And if so, why?
Yeah, I do. It's like such a great question. And the reason I believe it is that I feel like we need, it's kind of like what you said earlier, you know what I mean? That we need to be on each other's team, especially because of what I mentioned earlier, that like, it just seems like Black and brown people are under attack everywhere. Like if you look at the news, like it's just amazing that all of these protests and things are coming to light on social media, but in various locations, Black Lives Matter is not only focused on in the United States. It's like everywhere. I mean, Canada, South America, even Africa, So I just feel like this is an opportunity for all of us to learn from each other, and also figure out ways to support each other so that we can all thrive in this world. And I'll keep emphasizing thriving. There's so much to learn. There's no reason for the division, because there's a huge divide. And there needs to be healing for sure. It's one of the things that we like to focus on our projects. You know what I mean? Is making sure that we open up the floor for the first day to talk about like what some of our issues are, you know what I mean? And kind of work from a place of healing so that we can move forward and work on projects where everyone can grow and prosper, so absolutely, I do believe it's important for connections to be made across the diaspora, especially like, we were talking about reparations earlier, and I've been thinking about like what reparations would look like, you know what I'm saying? And like, just imagine if like there was this opportunity. I've been working on this project with another filmmaker, a friend of mine, and it's called Exodus, and just kind of looking at what the world would look like if people of African descent decided to leave all at the same time from various Western countries and come to Africa. What that would look like for people from the African diaspora. What would that look like for African people? You know what I mean? So this is a project that we've been working on for like 2 years, just documenting stories, interviewing people about what they imagine their experiences would be. You know what I mean? But just imagine like kind of having a visual representation of what that would look like. I think that it would take away the fear that people have. You know what I mean? So if people see it on the screen, if people see it in a book or in a comic, you know what I mean? Then the idea won't feel so far away, so foreign, so not possible. You know what I mean? So creating more images like that, where people are living in Africa, very similar to like what we see in Black Panther. You know what I mean? Because that could be a reality, but the problem that we have specifically Africa is that we have a lot of bright people that are leaving. You know what I mean? It's calling it the brain drain. People are leaving, and we're losing some of our most talented people. And unfortunately, when that happens, a country can't grow, let alone a continent. You know what I mean? So just imagine we take the best and brightest Black and brown people, put them on the continent of Africa. Just imagine what we could do. You know what I mean? Especially because things here are still in the middle of development. You know what I mean? Things here are still in the middle of trying to become something, So it would just be an interesting way to go, to see a different future for the continent and for Black and brown people in their own space, where they don't have to worry about supremacy, white supremacy, and all these other issues that we're facing in Western regions.
It's important that you mentioned that brain drain, right?
Yeah.
Because this would be this current brain drain would be a repeat of history, because what a lot of people don't understand about enslavement and what was happening during the transatlantic slave trade is not, they weren't just taking random people. They were
Right.
taking the experts in agriculture, because the Europeans needed to learn how to till the land. They made a mistake and killed off all the natives. So they had to find somebody else who was an expert and who could find out how to curate the land and how to make tools, and who were, intelligent. So they didn't enslave African people because of what we did not know. They
Yeah,
enslaved us
exactly.
because what we knew and what we were experts at. So a lot of the astrologists, a lot of the, of course,
Historians.
agriculturalists,
Yeah,
historians, all of the
yeah,
people who were, people who were built the constructions, the architects, the
yeah.
engineers. These are the people they were
Design.
taking, and they were, the Europeans cozied themselves up before they started the slave trade. So they knew who everyone was. They knew the hierarchy of the society. And so they particularly kidnapped those people. They left a lot of apprentices behind. So they hadn't already mastered the crafts. So Europe was able to go back to Africa and present information and skills that they had learned from Africans. They were able to present it to Africans as if it was coming from Europe.
They're the ones that created
To
it.
create
Yeah.
a dependency of these Africans who were left behind on the Europeans, thinking that the information had come from them when the information had come from their very ancestors. And
Yeah,
so,
which still continues today, it still continues today. It's just crazy. It's mind-boggling.
exactly. And so those things, like context, is very important when we're talking about a lot of these things, because it's left out of the conversation so often.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's important for us to talk about that. But you spoke about reparations, and we were talking about that off air, right? And so I was
Exactly.
saying that I believe that every African descendant who was enslaved in any country is owed reparations to repair for the damage that was done, right? But I spoke about that brain drain because think about the brain drain and the impact that it had on those who were left behind as well. So
Exactly.
there's reparations owed on the continent as well, because that brain drain left that gap so heavy that colonization was able to happen. Had those intellects and those people who were producing industry in Africa not been enslaved, it would have been much more difficult to colonize those who were left behind. And so that one transatlantic slave trade event crushed Africa on both sides. You have people who are kidnapped, and then you have people who are held hostage in their own home, right? And so neither is an ideal situation. Both are horrible. And so here we are today in a place where we have the technology to, again, communicate with one another and get to know one another. It is our time now to start focusing on unity, collaboration, partnerships, and ways that we are rooted together and bonded together than allowing those who have intentionally isolated us from one another with their divisive myths to continue to curate those myths and stoke the fire of those untruths ourselves. Off air, we talked about
Jamal, I can't hear you. connection. Oh no. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the programs that we do here in Lagos. So with You Are for Africa, we're really concerned about making sure that we create spaces for people from the diaspora to connect with people living on the continent. So we organize trips where we travel together in groups to develop projects with different grassroots organizations. So unfortunately, because of what's happened with COVID, we weren't able to do that this year, but we're really hoping that things will shift for the better so that we can plan our first trip for September next year, hopefully in Ghana. With public art and public schools, every 3 months. So our projects are focusing next year on teaching students about rape and self-defense. We are focusing on having a digital exchange project where students from our schools here in Lagos will work with that are in schools in the United States, particularly New York. We are working on a project that focuses on agriculture so that students can learn to grow food in their homes, so it's a project that's called hydroponics. So we always invite educators and professionals in their various industries to come and work with us on those types of projects. They just have to send a message to us that they'll be in Nigeria and that they would love to work with our students or with our communities. So we're always facilitating programs and always trying to figure out ways to collaborate with people. And we're really looking for people from the diaspora to come and work with communities here because we don't see them enough here. You know what I mean? We always have people from Europe, people from America, obviously, that are interested in doing work here. And we really want our communities to see people that look like them from various parts of the diaspora doing amazing work, so if you're an engineer, we need you. If you're an artist, we want to meet you. If you're a singer, we want to meet you. So we don't necessarily say that if you have a specific profession that we don't need you. Like if you have a profession, you have something that you want to share with our communities here, a talent or something that's teachable, then we're so happy to host you and organize trips with you and programs with you. So we just want to see you. Yes, so come through when it's time, when it's available, when people can.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And it's, like I said, very important the work that you are doing. And I'm so happy to be able to speak to you and allow other people to know what it is that you're doing. As I said before we started, there are entities at work trying to stop us from communicating with one another, which means that something very powerful and fruitful is going to come out of this connection. So I am back from the dark ages, and like I was saying though, before I got so rudely interrupted by internet, I was talking about how it's important for us to see, to not only we are defining ourselves in Africa by borders that were created in the Berlin Conference. We are still using the borders that were used to colonize us. And in a way, those borders
Exactly.
have become prisons that we hold ourselves in because, they purposely form those borders to not only split ethnicities, because now you have Yoruba that's split between Benin, Togo, and southern Nigeria. And now
Mm-hmm.
in a country that they call Nigeria, you have the Fulani, you have the Hausa, you have Yoruba, you have Igbo, you have a lot of other people fighting for,
Yeah.
the same power, where they were once their own nations, where they had their own sovereignty.
Mm.
And so now it's like, no, now all of you have to fight for one entity of this new nation of Nigeria that we will place onto all of your heads, and now, be at war with one another for eternity over who's going to be
Exactly.
the ruling class, right? And they did
Exactly.
this in across the continent. And then not only did they didn't just stop there, they convinced African Americans that Africans didn't like us. They convinced Africans that African Americans don't
Exactly.
like them. They convinced people in the Caribbean of the same sort. And so now we are infighting on the continent in these nations amongst ethnic groups that were always sovereign, but always did economic trade with one another.
Mm-hmm.
They had dealings with one another. So it's up to us to rewrite this narrative. So, even if it doesn't come with us physically, tearing down the borders, I just want us to bring it to the table. When we go to the African Union, let's look at, okay, let's undo the Berlin Conference. Why are we still
Mm-hmm.
respecting that? Like, really
Yeah,
have the conversation about why are we still respecting those borders?
yeah, totally. You know what I mean? I mean, we were talking about this earlier, and just like this idea of, unfortunately, there's so many things happening specifically on the continent that people have not even had an opportunity, I don't think, to even think
Exactly.
about dismantling these systems that we're talking about. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Even like with the issues of poverty that we're dealing with and unemployment.
Right.
Those are the big issues that our leaders are worried about here on the continent,
That stop people
Even
from
thinking
looking
about
at the larger picture because there's so many micro
exactly.
items. Exactly. I understand, because the same thing happens with poverty here with African
Yeah,
Americans, and we don't
yeah,
have time to think about ourselves as African people because we
right.
are trying to feed our family.
Right. And you're also
Completely
trying to make
understandable
sure that the people realize in the States, because you are
that
people
we are people.
that were people. Exactly.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you're fighting that as well, and it's
Yep.
like, but I think one of the things that's really interesting about the conversation that we're having right now is that, like, maybe dismantling that system would solve these problems. You know what I'm saying?
And
Maybe
that's what I'm
because we have,
saying. That's where
yeah.
I'm coming from, right?
Yeah, but people, like, even just to sit down and be like, okay, what is this going? If I dismantle this, what is it
Mm-hmm.
going to look like? How is that
Right.
going to affect the people around me? You know what I mean? And I think that conversation scares people more than trying to work within the box that they're already working in. You know what I mean?
Yes, because it's
So
changed,
we can have that
because it's
conversation.
different.
Yeah.
It's different, and what's over that cliff is always going to be what's over the horizon. You think the
Mm-hmm.
horizon is a cliff. It may be more land, but if you're
Yeah.
too afraid to walk toward the horizon, you'll never know. You think you're going to fall off the earth, where it may
Exactly.
just be the most fertile land that you're going to get to by looking towards something that's different from your status quo, from what you're already
Exactly.
used to. And,
Right.
people like to say the devil that you know. Well, it may not be a
It's
devil on the other side.
a
It might be something
no one
good.
knows what's on the other side,
So it's
but that's
very
what's
worth.
great about media and film.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
sometimes it just takes someone comes up with the vision. It might not be the right vision. You know what I'm saying? That's what's so great about Black Panther. And I always go back to it because, I believe that media can be very pedagogical. You know what I'm saying? So, like, to
Mm-hmm.
see those images, like, not only was it inspiring, but it started to kind of open people's mind, like, oh, could we actually be like this?
Right.
And if we can't, what do we need to do to get there? You know what I'm saying? So that's what's so great, because it starts to open people's imaginations. It starts to have people think about, especially here on the continent, you know what I mean? Think about like what Africa could be, you know?
Exactly.
You know, we don't have enough images like that. We don't. And we need
And
to.
I love
We
that
really.
as well. And there were people who found ways to criticize that as well. So
Yes.
that's why I was just like, and that's why I was coming from it, even with the other conversation that we were having about Black is King, where we have to take the images that we have and use them and build upon it. We can take Black Panther and that imagery and the success of it and build upon it. So now that it is palatable, now that that door is open, we can easily go through it. And from Black Panther, we have Black is King, and then we have the Shola Ajayi production that blows the the roof off. Right? I like speaking things into existence. You're going to get used to hearing me just say things like that in our conversations. The more you get to know me, I'm going to speak some things into existence. But
I love it.
The thing is, even when we have these conversations of reparations, like I was having before, the conversation, if you heard of the ADOS situation here in the United States, is that the American descendant slaves, right?
Yeah.
So I have a from the beginning of this, I have a problem with it because it's creating a distinction that's already there, right? It's creating a so if you work for someone and you have been working there, let's say 5 years, and you're not getting a promotion, you're not getting a demotion, you're keeping the same job, but they create a press release and do a press conference about Shola is keeping her same position with the same amount of money and nothing is changing. And they make a big hubbub about it. What is the point of that? This is what I feel about ADOS, because it's creating a distinction between African Americans and the rest of the diaspora, as if we already are not in that position. We're already there. We're already disunified. Why are we announcing it and wearing it as a badge of honor to be more isolated from one another? As if we are the only population of people of African descent that were enslaved and that we're the only ones that are owed reparations. What we could be doing, just like in the conversation of dismantling the borders of the Berlin Conference, what we could be doing is saying, as an African American, I demand reparations for those of us in the United States, those of us in Jamaica, Haiti, Martinique, and create a diaspora coalition of fighting for reparations from Europe, from England, from France, from Portugal, from the Dutch, from the United States, and we all hold them accountable as a unified front. Then it's not just 13% of the African American population of the United States. You're going to have to answer to all of these African people together that are demanding, and we can go beyond the United States and look beyond the Supreme Court and the presidency of the United States, but take a case to the UN, and you have officials from Martinique, officials from Haiti, Black people from Peru, African Americans, Jamaicans, you know what I mean? All the same coalition saying, we demand reparations, and these are our demands. This is how it's going to look. It's going to come down in these programs. Okay, we want an allotment of funds. We want an allotment of these types of programs. We want an allotment of land. We want a guarantee of at least college education for all at no cost. We demand certain levels of universal health care in all of these countries for these people who are the descendants of this atrocity. Right? That's more powerful than us isolating ourselves and saying that we are American descendants of slaves and the other immigrants who are Black don't get a piece of our reparations, and we are denying people a piece of something that we don't even have, that's not even on the table for us to get.
Yeah.
And we're already telling the other Black people that we're going to exclude them from something that may not even happen. And it's doing nothing but causing more division or exaggerating the division that already exists. It just baffles my mind, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I heard about this group, I thought that it was created to be divisive in the Black community. You know what I'm
That's what
saying?
it
Like,
sounds
I
like to
thought
me.
that they, yeah, I mean, because I mean, didn't they come up right around when Trump was administration was in power? Because I had never heard of them before, so it was just really interesting when they came up. My understanding is that they're Black conservatives that support Trump. So I mean, and I could be wrong. This is just from like reading online about them, but I don't know how genuine the group is. You know what I mean? Just because of the time that they've come up, and I mean, I don't understand the reason to divide themselves more. Like, especially because like Black people, to me, already are divided in so many different ways. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So to create this group, it almost doesn't make sense, you know? So
Here was the
yeah,
kicker.
I believe that was set up to be divisive. Yeah.
When I learned about them, they came out with some salient points. They said, we're not going to just give our vote to the Democratic Party because until they have a real Black agenda, which is a salient point, because if we keep just giving the Democrats the vote, then they won't be encouraged or inspired to do anything specifically for the Black community, because they can just guarantee that the Blacks will vote for them because we're not voting Republican, right? They're not going to vote Republican, so they're going to vote for us. And, you know, we can lean on history and what we've done in the past to continue to, you know, garner their vote. But no, they were saying, and a lot of Black people were saying this. I was one of them, saying that I want to hear what the agenda is for us. The mistake in that is, there's a mistake in that, though. There's a very, you know, subtle flaw in that. We're waiting for them to create the agenda for us. That's not how it works. We have to have the agenda, and we have to tell them, this is our agenda and this is what we expect from you. And that's where we get into trouble, because we don't understand our constituency. We get to tell them we're the puppeteers. The politician is the puppet. We're supposed to tell them how to represent us. But if we don't have an agenda and we're waiting for them to plan an agenda for us, then we're going to be in the same position generation after generation. Those generations that were successful during the Black Power movement, during the Civil Rights movement, they had strategies. They weren't just marching to be marching. They marched when the cameras were on. They planned those marches for months. They knew who was going to be where and what was going to happen. They had funds ready to get people out of prison. They were ready with lawyers. They had all of these things in place. It was strategic. Now, today we are doing the surface level of what was happening in the past without the strategy.
Right.
So we need to go back and learn, okay, what was the strategy of the NAACP? What was the strategies behind the Black Panther Party? What were the strategies of Marcus Garvey? Why were they so successful? How were they so impactful? Why do we still talk about them today?
Exactly.
Right? It's strategic. Everything can't be, you know, loud on social media. We have to have some information. Some conversations have to be just between us. And then we have to propose the agenda.
We don't realize that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Even this conversation that we're having could be threatening. You know what I mean? To
Of course.
it's like, that's one thing that we don't realize. You know, we don't realize that people are watching to make sure that we are not unified. We are not working together. You know, and it might sound crazy to some people, but there's some. I mean, let's think about it. You know, the fact that African Americans and Africans for the most part, do not get along, do not communicate. You know what I mean? That's very strange. You know what I mean? So these are things that are done on purpose. You know, even if I could talk about my educational experience growing up in the States with having like Nigerian parents, you know what I'm saying? And know that there are groups of people that are still experiencing this and not connecting with people from Africa to have conversations, to learn about their culture, that we need someone like Beyonce, for example, to help bridge the gap there. You know what I mean? It's sad. It's very sad, even with the advent of like the internet, social media, you know what I mean? Like there's still this huge divide. So the unity aspect, exactly.
It goes back to that. It goes back to that conversation that we were having about your upbringing. You had two parents that were telling you that what you were learning in school was false. But because the influence was so heavy, it superseded what your own parents were saying from firsthand experience. Now take that and generalize it to a broader scope of people, right?
Exactly.
It's going to be so difficult and such a fun journey to get our people decolonized, right? But it's going to take people who are willing to fight for something that they may never see in their lifetime, who are willing to put in their work, right? And not do it for any type of satisfaction, but to do it for the purpose of I'm building the foundation of something that's going to be greater.
The foundation, right? We don't have it. We don't. You know, we need it. We need it.
Exactly. We are right now building houses on sand.
Exactly.
And it is not, you know, stable. That's why, you know, every time we feel like we're gaining some momentum, we can easily be toppled over because the foundation is not strong. So we need to first lay down the cement, and that comes with the strategies, though. That comes with not isolating. And so we have a comment, and I understand this, Nigel, that ADOS is solely about a justice claim for reparations for U.S. enslavement. I get it. But my point is that the U.S. is not the only nation that participated in the enslavement in the chattel form. And I believe that it is more powerful for us as Black people across the diaspora in a unified effort to demand for reparations for us all. It's a heavier claim. It's just like, for example, if I have a case against Johnson & Johnson, right? The company that made baby powder, and it gave me cancer, right? If I go into that myself against Johnson & Johnson, I'm going to lose. But if I get other people to make that same claim, it becomes one of those large cases of the people against that company.
Exactly.
The more people that join that case, the more likely we are to win. If it's only African Americans going after the United States, we're going to lose that battle. But if it's African Americans, Jamaicans, Haitians, Peruvians, Brazilians, and we can keep naming off countries that participated in the enslavement of African people, Mexico, all of South America, right? Most of the Caribbean. If we all come together and make a case toward not one nation, the UN.
Yes, exactly.
The World Bank. Then we start to make some noise.
Exactly.
Right? And we don't divide ourselves in the midst of it. We don't cause division amongst our own, which is unnecessary. It's not necessary for me to say, as an African American, my reparations shouldn't be paid to, you know, Afro-Jamaicans. That's just causing tension between me and my Jamaican brother for no reason over something that neither of us have received yet. You know what I mean? And so there's a better way. All I'm saying in my critique of ADOS is there's a better way to name ourselves, because just by calling ourselves American descendants of slavery or slaves, we're calling our ancestors slaves and not people.
Enslaved people.
We are identifying with the term slave when enslaved is something that was done to us.
Exactly.
We're not brought over here as slaves, and there's something that precedes that time period, right? There's somewhere that we came from. So I don't like it because it starts our history with that time period.
Exactly.
I don't like it because it seems a little divisive. So I want to be more inclusive in our fight. Not saying that we don't fight for the same thing, but I like fighting for our people instead of fighting against a system. Because once the system is destroyed, then you feel like there's nothing else to fight for. But if you're fighting for the thing that you love, you will never be unaware. If I'm fighting for my family, I'm always going to be on guard. But if all I'm doing is fighting for the enemy that's outside my door right now, once I defeat that enemy, I might unlock my door again, right? But I think there's a place that we have to get to as African people, that we have to just understand what has been done to us and what we can do about it. And the reason that I am enjoying this conversation with Shola is because she's doing the work. Like, she's, as an African from the continent, understands the importance of getting people in the diaspora to see Africa in a certain light, because we need one another. It's reciprocal. So again, just let the people know the work that you're doing, and then we'll get into this conversation about End SARS. So just let the people know just one more time about the work that you do, and then we'll get into the next topic.
Sure, yeah. So You Are for Africa basically works to connect people from the diaspora to Africa through social projects and through media projects. So like working on building a school together or making a film together, so that's what we do at You Are for Africa. Under You Are for Africa is Public Art Africa. So it's a youth-led organization that gives young people the space to express themselves, to create, to engage with their community in positive ways. There's not a lot of platforms like this for young people in Nigeria specifically. And we work with people in Ghana, we work with people in Cameroon, with hopes that like it will spread so that all our young people can end up working together and improving the continent, you know what I mean? There's not a lot of spaces like that. So we try to create that space. Even with COVID, so we tried to create that space online. So we really want to encourage people to support us, obviously, but also think about ways that you can connect with our young people here on the continent, here in Nigeria specifically, and also connect with our communities here so that you can learn about us, we can learn about you, and then from there, like unity can start to grow, when we all come from a place of understanding. And I just wanted to add, Jamal, that I think it's really great that you mentioned maybe bringing this conversation about reparations to the United Nations, because at the end of the day, it is not the U.S. that only committed this crime, right? We have Spain part of it, United Kingdom part of it, Portugal, it's a much larger, I mean, if we really think about the struggle that, Black and brown people have in the world today, these powers that were these countries that were superpowers at that time, the early 1800s, and so on and so forth, that we can point the finger at these countries for what has happened and what continues to happen to Black and brown people in the world. So maybe this is a conversation. The conversation about reparations isn't just something that is on the as the responsibility of the United States, but a lot of these other Western environments as well. Germany. You know what I'm saying? France, like all these places should probably be part of the conversations as well.
Most definitely. So. Exactly. And this will not be, the last time that we speak on this. And we will continue these conversations, and hopefully they stay fruitful. But I like having dialogue and back and forth in a way that is functional, that produces something, you know.
Exactly.
I don't like having dead end conversations where nobody gets anywhere, or nobody's really listening to the other person. They just want to get their point out. That's not how we conduct, you know, that's not productive. So earlier in this year, 2020, which has been a crazy one to say the least.
Yes.
During the pandemic, the world saw the murder of George Floyd, right? And before that, we started to hear about, here in the States, someone in Georgia, Ahmaud Arbery, was hunted down and killed in the middle of the street while he was jogging. And then a couple of, I don't know, months or weeks after that, Breonna Taylor was shot in her own home. All of this got culminated with the visual of seeing George Floyd get murdered, though, because Breonna Taylor was killed in her home, no camera. Ahmaud Arbery was being videotaped by one of the people who hunted him down, so there wasn't very clear imagery of what was happening. So, but it was undeniable of what happened to George Floyd, right?
Right.
And you saw protests happening, and what warmed my heart was that for one of the first times in my life, I saw the Black Lives Matter, or the Black freedom struggle of what's happening to us as African Americans, permeate outside of the borders of the United States.
Exactly.
And specifically those of us who were in Africa and demanding justice for those of us here. So to, you know, be consistent, just like in my rhetoric on, we need to come together to tear down those Berlin Conference borders. We need to come together and fight for reparations. We need to come together and make sure that, just like Nigeria and Ghana and all other African nations and nations around the world stood up for what was happening, the atrocities that happened to African Americans in the United States, we need to make sure that when we see the same happening on the continent or to any of our Black brothers and sisters globally, that we stand up as well. So SARS is a police unit that was started in 1984. Am I correct? Because there was, you know, violence in Nigeria and
that time. I'm not sure when it was created, but yeah, it's basically a police unit that was created to focus on anti-robbery. But they've definitely been out of hand for many years. So
right. Because I was reading up on it. And so the article that I read in the New York Post said that it was created in 84 in response to just violence and kidnapping that were happening out of control. So they needed a specialized unit. And for the people, what does SARS stand for? I know it's anti-robbery.
Yeah, anti-robbery squad, I think. But I'm not sure what the security anti-robbery squad. Hold on.
I'll bring it up again. I had it up on my phone.
What's it? Yeah, special anti-robbery squad.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the special anti-robbery squad has now become the very thing that it was created to fight against. It's become organized crime.
Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, they extort people. They, I mean, killed a lot of people and hidden those deaths. You know, I mean, people are afraid of them. You know, it's so odd. You know, like that you were created to protect people, but yet people are afraid of you. And they definitely have thrived on that fear. You know, so people said it's enough is enough. I think especially with COVID. And, you know, there are various things happening in Nigeria. The price of electricity has gone up. The price of, during this period, people have been online more. So all of the fees that you usually pay have gone up. You know what I mean? Like they have increased everything, you know? So I think it was just one of those things where it was, people said enough is enough. So I know that the focus is NSARS, but it's about much more. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just one piece of a bigger problem, you know?
Right. So what I wanted to know, as a person who is all about unity across the African diaspora, what ways can we tangibly get involved with, you know, just as individuals, as other organizations, you know, how can we collaborate with those on the ground in Nigeria to make any type of impact?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and there's tons of things people can do. One of the big things is making sure to, if you have the funds to do it, like to donate. The organizers, they're called the Feminist Coalition, and they're online. You can get all their information for donations online, but they have been really strategic about getting resources out to people so that they can make a dent in what's happening. You know what I mean? And so funding or supporting them monetarily would be really great. Having these conversations that we're having would be amazing so that people can better understand what exactly is happening on ground here. I think one of the challenges is that when the police, the government, the military open fire on innocent protesters, you know, they threatened to turn off the internet, you know, so that was a huge fear because the internet has been our way to be able to share what is happening here, you know what I mean, to prove that this is what's happening, it's happening on ground, our own government is doing it, you know what I mean? So it's great when people in the diaspora share those tweets, share those Instagram videos, you know what I mean, so that everyone can see what's happening. It puts pressure on our government to do what's right. You know, if no one knows about it, then there won't be any change. You know what I mean? So the retweet, the conversation, like this conversation that we're having is so important. Also to make sure to donate to that organization specifically, because they have been very transparent about how they spend the money. They have been sending money to support people that were injured during the protests. They have been giving people credit so that they can actually be online and document what's happening and share it online. You know what I mean? They've been giving people food, supporting people that have been arrested, you know, so they're just doing a lot with the funds and have been very, very transparent about it. So, those are like the three main things that people can do that would be very powerful. Making sure they support monetarily, making sure to share what they see online, and also verify, because there have been, unfortunately, misinformation, a lot of it. So just verifying what it is that you're sharing before you actually share it. And then having conversations like this, hearing from people that are on the ground about what's happening. It's really important.
Yeah. And that's important for us to know what we can do so that we can start doing those things. And like I said, this platform is for getting information out, for sharing the space with other people who are doing the work, right? I want people to be exposed to people who are doing the work so that you know that Pan-Africanism is not just theoretical. It's something that we can do, right? It's activities that we can do, you know, books that we can read, things that we can donate to, you know, and it's just beyond just theory of this pie in the sky idea. It's real life, right? And so, and there are so many beneficial things that can come from us not being so isolated from one another and actually communicating with one another. You know what I mean? So it's just very important for me for us to talk about these things, and just as much as we, and I've said this since the beginning of African Unity Initiative, is that Nigeria's problems can't just stay Nigeria's problems. African Americans' problems can't just be African American. Haiti's problems just can't be Haiti's problems, or else the world will continuously pick at us one at a time and exploit us
Exactly.
individually because they see us as isolated. But if they know that if I pick on Haiti, I got to answer to Nigeria, Kenya, the United States,
Exactly. How powerful is that?
they
You
will be
know,
less
how powerful
likely
is that?
to come around. Exactly, digging up things. So, I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many things that, so much work to be done and so much work that is being done. That's one of the things I want to highlight. And that's why we do this,
Mm-hmm.
because work is being done. And we're slowly but surely gaining the momentum to overcome these things. And, at some generation, we'll just be maintaining our success. But the foundation has to be built upon something solid, right? So that's what we're
Right.
doing here. And trust me, this is not the last time you guys will see Shola on an African Unity Initiative show on this channel, or just working together in general. This is about to be a powerful partnership because so much of what You Are for Africa and Public Art Africa is doing is so aligned synergy wise with African Unity Initiative. It only makes
Mm.
sense that we,
Yeah.
collaborate and partner with one another and just build something, so powerful. So it's been wonderful speaking with you. I want you to once again let people know the work that you do, how they can get in touch, how they can be involved. Just let them know everything.
Okay, thank you, Jamal. And thank you so much for having me. I have really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm really excited about the work that we're going to do together. For You Are for Africa, I guess the main thing that people should know is that we really work to connect the diaspora in Africa to work on development projects and media projects together. For Public Art Africa, our main focus is to create a space where young people can express themselves, where young people can create, and young people can engage with their community in a positive way. So we are trying to do that with various types of people. So if you're someone that has a specific talent or skill and you want to share that, please reach out to us. You can reach out to us via our websites or via email. You can email us at team@youareforafrica.com, or you can contact us via our contact pages on our websites. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from you and look forward to hopefully collaborating and working with you as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And
Yeah,
for everyone watching, if you wanted to know, African Unity Initiative is a nonprofit organization. We have communities that we work with across the African diaspora. We believe in a micro to macro way of Pan-Africanism, where when we're in your community, if we're in Sierra Leone, we're focused on creating projects that come from the people in Sierra Leone. When we're in Atlanta, we want to create projects that come from the people in Atlanta. As we gained more funding and we get projects on the road, so Atlanta is self-functioning, Sierra Leone is functioning, Haiti is functioning, then we start to introduce the leadership in those communities to one another. So now that you have a community in Atlanta connected to a community in both Sierra Leone, connected to a community in Cap-Haïtien, Haiti, to a community in Peru, where they are exchanging ideas, they're exchanging projects, they are doing cultural exchanges, they're getting to know one another. And so the Pan-Africanism starts to build up as real relationships between people, between these communities, where they know what's happening with one another and they can offer each other assistance in so many different ways. And that the potential that grows out of that is exponential. And there's really no limit to what can happen when we get to know each other on a personal level and we know that, oh, you're doing work in your community, I'm doing work to build up my community. Okay, this project worked in your community, maybe it can work over here. And then those things can just grow into something very massive and powerful. So please get involved and visit africanunity.us and visit us on our social media platforms at African Unity. Like, subscribe, and share our YouTube channel. It's at African Unity in the search bar of YouTube, or you can do youtube.com/C/African Unity, and you will find us, and you will find interesting conversations like the one I just had on distant relatives. We do mini podcasts that cover so many topics around the African diaspora. We hope that you guys stay engaged, stay informed, and just become active. There's so much that we can do and so much power that we have in our hands. We just have to take advantage of the opportunities that we are given. I love you guys, and we will see you on the next show.